record. No, wait, please request permission from the meeting host.
Yeah, you better request permission. How do I do
That's
that?
right. I think you can just record it and then I'll just
It says it's working, so.
Yeah, it says recording in my top corner, so we should be good.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Big Chris.
And I'm Janie B.
And this is One Minnesota Radio. So, folks, before we even get started, I want to let you know that we are just going to record the video straight through. There will be no editing whatsoever. I will edit the audio, so on weareonemnradio.com, it may be a bit edited, but on here, it is not edited. Wow. So, we thought we would do a special, radio broadcast with everything that's happened today or yesterday and kind of get this out. And we are joined today with some special guests. And I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Armondo Collins, who is also the board president for One Minnesota. So that's exciting. And Dr. Collins, are you there? Where's he at?
Yes,
there you are.
We got him back.
my video and audio went out for a hot second, but yes, I am here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Chris, Megan, and Janie. I'm Dr. Armondo Collins from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. I am a professor of African American Studies, and I am a digital scholar, which means that I study and critique people in the digital realm. What takes place in the digital realm? I think that what we're going to be talking about today kind of converges those two spheres of activity. What we saw has everything to do with historic and contemporary race relations, but the way we were all able to respond to it has everything to do with our ability to communicate in the digital age.
That's fantastic.
Totally agree with that.
Perfect person to
Okay.
talk to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
Also, we wanted to introduce Megan Curtis Law, who is
Hi.
legal counsel for One Minnesota. Megs, why don't you fill us in a bit?
I am from Minnesota originally, and I went to law school at Hamlin, and I got licensed, 8 years ago. And I have a practice in the Twin Cities. I focus mostly on personal injury law, but I really can't stop helping nonprofits. It's kind of been a thing I've been doing and I enjoy it. And so I have a lot of, I help a lot of people pro bono in the nonprofit sector. And, not, if people are friends with me on Facebook, they probably know I'm pretty vocal about politics, how I feel about that, my perspective on some of the things that happened in Minnesota with George Floyd, and obviously not a huge Trump supporter, if at all. So that's, I think I'm here to shed light on some of my own personal beliefs and some of the legal stuff going on right now with the madness in Washington.
And also, we still have not received a bill from Megan Curtis Law, so
Yeah,
there's
that's because
that.
it's free.
We thought it was last
Right, we're racking it up. Maybe every 10 grand.
There's no official bill, but I have a bunch of IOUs that I've already filled out. Armondo, I might put one on there for you. You gonna give me some?
Hey,
no, I'm just kidding.
Because I'm going to be coming to you. Bono.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I think that we should obviously start with what took place yesterday in our nation's capital. I, along with all of you and pretty much the country and the world, watched at least for me, in utter disbelief as, the worst possible. I just remember sitting there saying to myself, is this real? Am I watching White House Down or something? What is happening? What is going on?
Yeah, multiple times yesterday, I just felt like, is this a movie? If this was a movie, you would not believe what was happening right now.
Right.
Well, yeah, it was an attempted and failed coup is exactly what it was.
Me, I'm in North Carolina. I'm a Minnesotan. So I'm coming from where you guys are coming from, but I'm in a different place.
Yeah.
I was like, that's all of this coming.
Yeah,
Like, when and I don't want to rehash it, but when 2016 election happened, I said, you guys, this is crazy because all of this could happen. X, Y, and Z, if you let white supremacy be one of the controlling narratives of normativity, all you're going to get is violence. If you look at white supremacy and the history of America as it is constructed as a white supremacist union, that has nothing to do with you, anyone in the audience who is an individual American. But America was founded on white supremacy. The idea of whiteness as a category of humanity that reigns over all other categories of humanity and controls the narrative of society, justice, law, and economics, that has what we saw yesterday has happened over and over and over again in the Union. Look at Reconstruction politics in America. It happened in Georgia. It happened in Wilmington. It happened in other sections of the South. And that's why Southern politics, if you ever looked at the electoral map and it's all red, that is a very intentional construction of whiteness. You don't get that without an intentional construction of whiteness. 70% of all African Americans in the United States still live in the South. Electorally, as a voting bloc, if they all vote Democratic,
right,
that should be blue, but it's not blue intentionally. When legal recourse, whenever in the history of whiteness, as a mode of social force, whenever whiteness comes up against actual competition from non-whiteness, like all the laws don't work, all the rules, all the traditions don't work, violence is implored in order to quell it. In academia, we call it extra legal means, lynching, for instance. In Reconstruction politics, Black people were actually in the Senate or in state governments for the first time after slavery. You know what white people did? After they made the Louisiana Purchase deal, they said, okay, and we'll join the Union and we'll be cool as long as you let us do whatever we want. And what they did was go into the state houses and remove all of the nons. It wasn't just Black people. There were white senators and Congress people shot at the state house, killed, ran out of town because they didn't fit this normativity that white supremacy wanted. Now, to our country's credit, over the years, we've tried to at least give the facade of moving forward. But that is only because whiteness and race and racism only work if they can constantly control the narrative. And it will hide. It will hide and lay dormant for years, which it did. Right. During the 90s, early 2000s, especially after 9/11. Remember, in the 90s, we had the Million Man March, and it was clearly polarized in America. But it wasn't a polarization that Black people created. This is just where America was at. But once an external threat hit us, everybody was one love for like 3 years. And then it seeped back in. And it came to a head when Obama was elected. All of that, everybody was like, oh, where did it come from?
The birther movement from Trump, hello. They're like, we didn't know this was gonna happen.
Yesterday was Tea Party.
Well before he was even elected.
Yesterday was a Tea Party movement.
The Central Park Five, hello. I mean, I think that's Armando, to piggyback off what you're saying. I think that's my biggest thing, my biggest problem with what I'm seeing in the Senate and the Congress right now is, I understand that they didn't want this to happen. They didn't want this to happen at the Capitol, but to say they're shocked by it and that they were never warned of it is, it's just irrational. It's like you were warned of it and you turned a blind eye to get him elected because you were looking out for your own political careers and your own selfish motives. And then he's in office and then this happens. So, you know, I sympathize with, you know, I think that there's a lot of political pressure and politics has become this beast where people, it isn't even, you know, the democracy and that being the shining star is fleeting. It's about what can we do for ourselves? What is the gain in politics? And on both sides too. However, the Republicans that signed on to object to the vote yesterday, which was what caused all of this, because if the Republicans would have just said, we're not objecting, and Trump would have said, we're not going to fight this, that wouldn't have happened. So now the Ted Cruzes of the world, and, you know, actually, I don't even think he voted to object still. And, you know, but some of them, even Loeffler, who lost in Georgia yesterday, thank God, she went on and said, I'm changing my objection to this stuff. And it's like, no shit. Sorry, that's the first swear we dropped on the podcast. It's like, epiphany.
Even, you know, Jim Hagedorn and Michelle Fischbach from Minnesota, even after this was done at, you know, whatever, 3 o'clock in the morning, still voted against the certification of the Electoral College.
Knowing it wasn't going to win.
And Armondo, the Electoral College was actually something pushed by Democrats back in the day, if I understand it correctly, because they didn't want Southern people to be able to count slaves as whole people. It wasn't a Republican thing, right? It was a Democratic push for the Electoral College.
This is why in Western culture we have this binary of good and bad. It don't work. The Democratic Party was actually what we conceive of as the Republican Party right now, the party of racism.
Right.
It was started
to
hedge off fair and free competition from African Americans who were newly freed and in the electorate. They were overwhelmingly Republican because Lincoln freed the slaves. African Americans were Republicans up until roughly JFK, and when both parties started vying for civil rights legislation. For years, at least 100 years, the black people had been begging white Republicans for civil rights legislation and had gotten incremental changes, but only changes that maintain status quo. The Democrats have and are doing the same thing. It's just what we call progressive is just a little bit more than the other guys would do.
Right, exactly. It's, you know, I just think it's hard. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come on was to say, civics is boring to a lot of people. People don't care about civics anymore. They don't care generally about how government works. They're care, you know, how many likes can I get with my bikini pic on Instagram? And it's like, okay, well, I know we live pretty comfy lives in general. Obviously there's tons of issues, race issues. Black people don't live as comfortable as white people. But generally compared to some other countries in the world, our democracy has kept us pretty preserved from some things, and people forget. This is why you have these freedoms. You know, this might seem lame and we're talking about Trump again and what happened yesterday is so critically important to everyone's lives, regardless of people like, oh, I don't vote. And, you know, I'm sick of watching the news. Come on now. If you can't even understand basic civics and why this is important, it might not even be your fault. I don't think it is. Sometimes I have to Google civic stuff and I'm a lawyer. I mean, it's gone by the wayside, but until like the stuff you're talking about, the history of things, Armondo, Dr. Collins, is because that's so important to know. Like, if you don't understand that, how can you, it's like you can't be as enraged because you don't understand the importance of it. Right. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know. I just think civics needs to take a front, seat right now. One of the front seats, and I'll just plug right now, one of my favorite places to learn about government is called A Starting Point. And it was started by Captain America, of all people, the guy who plays that. And he has Republicans and Democrats on there frequently talking about politics and civics and how government works. And he does it in short videos so that our minds that can't even hold on to a concept for more than 10 seconds now, everyone should go and even just subscribe to it, and they'll send you or get the app. Learning about government is just so important if you want to be a part of the conversation, in my opinion.
So with the Electoral College, Biden wins the presidency with 306. Trump loses very ungraciously with 232. And that's where this whole thing started. So I think that we all maybe saw, maybe not this coming, but something coming when, they're like, okay, we're going to, we want to do recounts. We want to challenge this. And the Trump campaign is paying, just out the wazoo at every, turn to try to recertify, recount, and, claimed widespread voter fraud, except in the states that he won, of course. Those were, perfect and peachy.
And the election was fair. It was super fair.
Right.
It was brilliant.
And it goes through
Sorry.
and it continues on and it continues on and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But there's no way that the intelligence officials in the United States did not know or could not have been prepared for the events that took place yesterday in our nation's capital. If after the murder of George Floyd, they had, what did they spend on in Minnesota? I think the National Guard, I think it was like $3 million they spent. Well, in Washington, they spent $10 million on National Guard, and it looked like, like War of the Worlds there. So how were they so prepared for that? And something like this happens, and you have people in Roman soldier outfits and Viking helmets walking and smashing their way through the doors and onto the Senate floor. I don't think,
Chris, there was supposed to be an overhaul of security after the Capitol shootings years ago. And then they made a visitor center and they're supposed to make it more secure. But yesterday, and I don't know if it truly is, it seems so, this one conspiracy theory, I will say, I think has some weight to it, because how, right? And it was either an intentional choice or they really didn't think, this is normally a ceremonial procedure, what was going on in the Senate yesterday. So maybe, the benefit of the doubt, maybe they just thought this wasn't going to be the place this would happen. But it just, they knew, but that's not even true though, because they knew there were hundreds of people coming, right?
None of that's true. That is a Monday morning quarterback rationalization of what we saw. All of this has been telegraphed. The victim and the perpetrator are cousins. You saw people breaking in windows, but you also saw Capitol Police opening doors for people. You saw Capitol Police ushering people down the stairs gently to make sure that they weren't hurt.
Yes.
You saw police officers who duty bound, they were on the clock taking selfies with people who just did the thing that they were supposed to protect against.
Yeah.
You never see that in any other type of insurrection. You don't see that in Portland. Y'all didn't see that in Minnesota.
Nope.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that there's a double standard in this country when it comes to Black and white?
That's established, but this is even more pernicious than that. I'm willing to stand on the ledge of conspiracy theorist, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination. However, we can't say, where did this come from? Trump has literally telegraphed this thing from the beginning.
True.
There's never been a time where he said, I'm just going to concede power. And all year, if not longer than that, he's been saying, if you guys don't do what I want you to do, there's going to be some consequences. Yes. America's going to come down on you. And what he was talking about was what happened. He was the person who incited January 6th as the day to meet up at the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., and he even said it, we all watched it. He said it out of his mouth. I'm going to go walk with you guys. We're going to fight. But did he walk? No. You know why? Because he knew what was going to happen.
So when Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC, called in the National Guard, I watched her initial press conference, and I thought it was interesting that she had actually already called for help from New Jersey and from neighboring states, almost as if she knew that there was the possibility that President Trump would kind of push the National Guard response back. And, who knows if that happened, maybe later as they do investigations, that'll come out. But I've never seen such a lack for force being shown for such a volatile situation ever. I mean, everything we've seen for the past, 4 years has been, this is horrible, no violence, Blue Lives Matter,
Blue Lives
attack,
Matter.
attack,
Oh, I love
attack.
that one,
Right.
with
And
The people
yesterday
who
in
were
June
shouting
now.
Blue Lives Matter were the ones fighting Blue Lives last night.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
right.
I mean, it was,
Everything
I think
that
they
they told us
underestimated-
they were standing against us
Mhm.
for, they desecrated intentionally. They ran up in the Capitol. That is unprecedented.
they took
You
down
can't
the
do
US
that in a
flag
local-
and put up the Trump flag. To me, that's a mic drop. You're a Trump supporter, you're in a cult. At this point, it's a cult.
It went from sedition to treason as soon as they did that.
I think they underestimated the selfishness of Trump. And by them, I mean McConnell and, some of the leaders. But the only reason I say that, Armando, and I want to hear what you have to say about it, is because I feel like they didn't understand. They didn't necessarily prepare well enough for the fact that Trump would be like, you know what? I don't need you, McConnell. I'm going to take my band of thugs, which is what they were, and we're going to storm the Capitol. And now at some point, did McConnell realize that and fail to act? I'm sure. But I think that's for somewhat, they thought, this is the Republican Party. We're giving Trump this platform. He even turned on Fox News. I think Fox News has egg in their face as well, because it's like Trump turned on everybody, which I predicted long ago, and many did too, that he's going to try to start his own party, which is why it's so important to either impeach him or remove him from office so he cannot run again in 2024.
Well, speaking of
We're
that,
very smart people. Everybody here is a very smart person. And we've been talking about this since 2016, what could happen, what was going to happen, and what is going on. If we saw this, how can we let Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party off?
It's true. I don't know. I mean, it's.
So speaking of, Trump and him being removed from power, Megan, what is the 25th Amendment, and can that be something that could happen?
It's actually a little bit, it's hard to say exactly what steps will happen next, but basically the 25th Amendment, you hear it invoked sometimes when by presidents themselves when they're in a medical situation. Sometimes they'll say, I invoke the 25th. And I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I don't know how many times it's been invoked or what the history of it is. But essentially right now, an impeachment process would probably take too long to get him out of office. So that's why everyone's talking about the 25th, because the 25th, shockingly, the process to invoke the 25th is weird. It's like a letter. It's like Pence has to get the cabinet. So we're talking about Benjamin Carson, the leaders of the cabinet right now. He just has to, Vice President Pence has to say, you know what? We don't think that Donald Trump can do his job anymore. And then what he does is he essentially writes a letter to Congress and I think President Trump saying, we got 2/3 of his cabinet to say that they agree. And they don't even have to sign the letter. They just have to, in good faith, essentially tell and express to Pence that they agree with it. And then the letter gets sent to Trump, and then the process starts for removing him from office. Now, Trump can challenge it by writing his own letter saying I'm not unfit. And then the Congress then has the power to decide, whether or not they want to vote 2/3 to remove him using the 25th. However, if you remember, when he was impeached, they didn't have enough votes to do that. So could there be a change of heart, and could Congress then go 2/3? Because I think it's pretty much known that Trump will challenge if the 25th is invoked. And then the process becomes, is Congress going to stand up? Historically, they're not going to, because they haven't. Even last night, after all this happened, you had some of the objectors that said, we're not riding with him anymore. This is done. He's too crazy. We're out. But some of them stayed. Cruz, Hawley. I mean, so it's a numbers game. And that's why voting is so important and who's in office is so important, because situations like this come down to numbers. So the 25th is meant to protect the people when something like this happens. But Pence, this is the crazy thing. This is why VPs are so important. Kamala is so important. Is they have the power to invoke things like the 25th Amendment. So all eyes are on Pence right now. Honestly, What are you gonna do?
Hold on, y'all. Yo, Megan, you just said the fate of the nation depends on Mike Pence's backbone.
If you want the 25th to be invoked, you know what I mean?
Bruh, that's what I'm saying. You mean to
I
tell
know
me
it's not a good.
days, 13
I know.
days left in the crazy train is when you're
He has the nuclear codes,
this is too much for
Armando.
me."
Yeah.
He has the nuclear codes.
He's had them all this time.
I know, but
God, and who knows?
I agree. I agree he's been deranged from the start, but
Like what we've seen,
It's getting worse.
what we've
it's
seen.
just getting
Well, okay, to the point of Mike Pence and the 25th Amendment, we are grasping at straws
Mhm.
that we know we can't hold on to. We had him impeached,
Mhm.
and that wasn't crazy enough. He's done a bunch of crazy, but not even crazy. I'm not gonna call it crazy because crazy people don't know what they're doing. He's done a bunch of vile things intentionally, and nobody has checked him. Nobody has had the backbone, spine, moral character to do it.
Well, in his
What
party.
makes us think that anybody in good faith is going to do that 13 days out? If they do it, it's going to be a Mick Mulvaney.
Yeah,
Well, better yet,
but he doesn't have lots of
you're
power right
asking
now, though, right?
Mike Pence to pull a Mick Mulvaney with a little more courage. 13 days out saying, I'm not with this anymore. But Mike Pence has to go the extra stage and actually put punitive measures
Yep.
toward Trump. And no American that I've seen has had the temerity to do that.
Well, can we rely
No
on
one
his
in
own
power who could
selfishness?
actually check his power has actually done anything to check his power, because they understand that the way it's structured, it has no teeth. And really, we're in a monarchy. We're
Right now, yeah.
right. We've always been. We just didn't know it. All Trump did was walk up to the line and say, let me just see if I put my foot over here, what happens? What could you do? Who's going to do anything? Who's bad enough to do anything? Nobody. And when nobody's bad enough to do it, he steps another line over.
Well,
the president of the United States went in front of the United States yesterday and incited an insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
We can't gloss over that. We can't. All of the vile stuff he's done before that, we can't dismiss. But hold on, he basically did like a Cobra Commander thing. Like, we've seen this in G.I. Joe. This is why you don't let Lex Luthor become president.
Well, Batman was there, and what did he do yesterday? Nothing. I'm just kidding. But
no,
but
the
you
Viking beat his ass.
Can't you rely? They might, maybe they were Packers. Okay, so I'm a Packer fan. Sorry, but can't you rely a little bit on the selfishness of some of these lawmakers? Pence, anybody that wants a career in politics right now, here's how I see it.
They're going to have a career after this.
But do they know? Because we just won the Georgia seats. Those people thought they had them unlocked. Things are changing, and I know it's not changing at the pace we would want it to change, but I do see some change and some hope. And unfortunately, I think it takes events like this. It takes Selma. It takes George Floyd for some white people to wake up and realize that this is even if you're just the most selfish person, this is affecting you too. So even just use your baseless, your selfishness to propel doing the right thing after this point. And that's the only reason I think Pence might do it is because there's a chance, because all the media is turned on, the Republicans, there's a chance that they might do it because they're scared they won't get reelected or have a future in politics if they don't. And now I agree with you, Armondo, that's a very slim chance in my mind, but I do think there is that, possibility that might motivate them.
For me, it rises to nothing higher than a hope.
Mm-hmm.
And every day as a human being, I wake up, I hope that the quote unquote better angels are going to bless people's hearts, and they're going to do what is supposed to be done and needs to be done. However, the reason we're all here and the reason that there is so much contention in this country right now is we know that everybody doesn't have their better angels. Mm-mm. And most people who are in power are not being guided by the good angel. They're being guided by the angel, the evil angel. Remember, the devil was an angel. Like the better angels that they're leaning on ain't the same ones we talk about. Mm-hmm. Those people, yes, they are in it for self. They are in it to maintain power, but they're also in it with a worldview that wants to maintain a specific world order. it includes at the top of it whiteness. And whiteness does not include the majority of people who classify themselves as white. You could get it too. But the narrative says it's them who's going to get it before you. American selfishness says, well, I'd rather them get it than me get it. But what you're not understanding is that if they're getting it, you going to get it. Eventually, once they stop beating them, they're going to come after you.
It's that quote, they came for the Jews, or they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist. And then they, and then they came for me. That to my mind, that's exactly, I put that up on Facebook. It. That and the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain neutrality in the time of moral crisis, which was or was not said by Dante. I don't care. It's a great quote. I'm like, those two quotes right now, figure it out, people.
So in the beginning, Dr. Collins, you said that, our kids and our kids are going to be saying, where were you when this happened? What were you doing? What, and I think that that's valid. And, Janie, I wanted to, check in with you because amongst all of us on this call and on this podcast, you are, besides being the director of operations for One Minnesota, besides some of the other great things that you're doing, recently becoming a licensed real estate agent. And yeah, congratulations on that. And the fact that you are a new mother of a beautiful Black baby girl.
So beautiful. And smart and brave.
Right.
And smart.
And she got huge like overnight. She's like in college or something already. But for you as a new parent, what was it like for you watching as this unfolded? Not just as, the mother of a Black child, but just as a mother, just, being in America as an American citizen, paying your taxes. What was this like watching this unfold for you?
I mean, I first off have been kind of quiet because I feel like we're sitting here with two people who are very qualified to talk about this. And I feel kind of just like happy to be here. But as a mother, first off, I'm happy that my daughter is so young right now. And she will hopefully, when she gets older and can make decisions and be the people out there protesting, that it's a safer world for her. Because right now it's very scary. And I also feel very lucky every day that she's not a man right now. I think that would, for some reason, that feels more scary to me, having a son. I feel like I can protect my daughter a little more. But I mean, I was just sitting in awe. I mean, I was at the doctor yesterday, and I could hear all the doctors out in the hallway talking about what was going on. They're like, they just stormed the Capitol. They're inside the Capitol. And I was just like, what a world we live in right now. And yeah, Dr. Collins, what you were saying, I was so surprised, but you're so right. In 2016, when Trump became president, I remember we were sobbing. We were just like, what could this mean? And I had every hope in the world that it wouldn't mean what it did and what is happening. But I think, Chris, you said something earlier. Had Trump not made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, I don't think Biden would be our upcoming president. And I don't think we would have control over the Senate. And I don't think that we would have the control and the ability to make the changes that hopefully will come within the next 4 years.
Right. And I wanted to ask you about
that. Well said, Janie B.
I wanted to ask you about that, Dr. Collins. So I have this idea, and I had said to Janie earlier off camera that I'm actually not mad at Donald Trump. I'm not upset with him. And in a way, I feel like I should high five him, because had he been just a little less abhorrent, had he been maybe just sort of reasonable, he could have and possibly would have won this election. And then Pence would have maybe went on to do 4 or 8 years. And then Trump's crazy kids might have went on after that. But because he was so ridiculous.
I forgot about them until this moment. What?
Yeah. And he was so disgusting.
We're not out of the woods yet, by the way.
Well, they kicked Trump off Twitter. So I guess now, what are those kids saying? It makes me want to Google it.
Facebook and Facebook and Instagram. He's
Oh,
kicked off
finally. Good
currently.
job, Facebook. You know, all these old
but-
people storming the Capitol are because you let that shit be on Facebook. They're all 30, 40, 50. They're not the young
Right.
kids that are in the streets. They were older people, older white people. I blame Facebook and Trump.
So had he not been so ridiculous, I really feel that America, for the most part, was like, nah, bruh, like, we're good. You gotta go. Also, this whole Senate race, nope. And that was that. Like, what is your opinion on, you know, and I don't really think it's a conspiracy theory, but do you believe that America was just fed up with Donald Trump? Do you think that they were just like, you got to go, you got to get out of here?
No to that.
Okay.
There are 70 million people, half of the people who voted.
True.
If you go to white America, like, you could walk out of your house right now, you guys are in Minnesota, 90% white. You can go 1, 2, and the 2 voted for Trump. Like, that doesn't go away. He was the popular, like, I used to think that it was probably 60-40 anti-racist versus racist. Nah, it's about 70-30 racist, anti-racist. The reason Georgia is a litmus test for America. Stacey Abrams realized that the only way to counteract that 70-30 is to bring in the rest of the electorate that had been intentionally suppressed. Whiteness as an idea was designed to stifle open competition against American citizens. If you don't, race was created as a concept when the country created itself. America created race. And when they did this, they said, you know what? We're going to create these magical categories of humanity. You could have said all the brown-haired people are a race, or, you know, all of the tall people are a race. No, you said there is this unmitigated category of whiteness that only includes males and females, and they all are presumably free. There's a second category of human beings called Negro, who are either free or slaves. And by the next census, they conflated free and slave to the same thing, which economically, politically, and socially created a caste system in the United States. If you haven't, that caste system is where we're at right now.
Class warfare.
The same dynamics that happened yesterday could have happened under Obama, but it wouldn't have. If, let's just say Obama was president, it was the end of his first term. Remember, he was up against Mitt Romney and everybody wanted him out. If he wanted to stay so bad, he told anybody who's riding with him, let's go storm the Capitol. There would not have been the slightest bit of equivocation about what should happen next. It wouldn't have even gotten to that point, but there would not have been, you know, who's to blame? Was it the security guard? Was it Joe Blow over there? We saw it happen on TV. There's been plenty of documentary evidence that he's given us that I'm reprehensible. And so what? In fact, his whole platform was, I'm the worst kind of white man, but I'm a white man, and whiteness rules.
And I speak my mind.
Wow.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Collins, that I think is important? So where does this leave people? I have relatives who are Trump supporters. I am a white person. I'm from Red Wing, Minnesota. Okay. So I can't change where I'm from, and I can't change the subconscious racism that I'm sure, or you know, I don't think it's conscious. I don't think anyone would say it's conscious. Subconscious. I mean, I grew up as a white person. So I think some of what I noticed, I registered hundreds of people to vote this summer. And part of what I noticed is this, you're a white person, you don't understand. You're not going to get it. You're never going to get it. And it does, you know, when you're holding out a pen to somebody and they say, can I please have the pen? You give it to them. When they say, give me it, you hold back. So just as a person, as a human, when someone's talking shit about your race, as you guys well know, you get defensive. And so it's like, how do we then bridge that gap? Yes, we know racism. If you're an educated person in America right now and you care at all about anyone else besides yourself, you understand that there is a pandemic of racism going on right now. And I think there was a window into that with George Floyd. And I think I heard a ton of white people, Trumpers, after George Floyd say, yeah, we see it now. I know that's frustrating after all these years, but at the same time, they see it now a little bit, right? A little more. I'm telling you, some people, maybe not enough to make a huge difference, have switched sides. But how do you reconcile this? It took everything for me to not text those relatives and be like, hey, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Did you see the thugs at the Capitol today? You know what I mean? Like but it's how do you bring white people in, which it's really unfortunate that we even have to do this, but how do you do that without making people defensive? Because I feel like bridging that gap
coming from was the defense.
Yeah, bridging the gap between the non-educated whites that follow Trump and the educated Republicans who now may have the chance to try to help take the party back, whatever that means. How do you do it in a way without being like, you know what, you're white, you're never going to understand, and just sit down? I mean, how do you?
I think you have to get to a place where very often, as in my lectures and in academia in general, we say that race is a social construct. It was made up in history, in time, and you can point to it, and it has no biological significance to the human being.
I really haven't heard that much, Armondo. This is like one of the first times I've heard that. It makes so much sense to me, but I really honestly, I mean, maybe it's just probably I haven't read it, but that is to me a brilliant way, you know, and you shouldn't have to do that. We all bleed the same color when we bleed, but you see what I'm saying?
Joseph Graves, The Emperor's New Clothes, he talks about how in anthropology, it doesn't exist. Like we're a scientific, rationally based society, supposedly. In science, the idea of race has been myth busted at least 100 years. Ever since eugenetics blew up, science has realized, okay, there's really no human difference. However, psychologically, your worldview is racialized. If in America, if you were born in America, you believe the idea of race is a naturalized thing. But that isn't a world culture. You can't go everywhere and race operate logically the same way or socially and politically the same way. This is an American thing. What we need to do as Americans is educate ourselves to that fact, and specifically on the white side. White people need to go in and educate themselves about race and whiteness. Not from my perspective, I'm not pleading with a white person for anything. I'm a grown ass man. I was born, and I believe when they told me I was, this is your land, this is my land. When they made me sing that, I realized, oh, maybe that's true. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm not willing to capitulate to any human being to ask them for my humanity. Once I get into that, the thing is gotten even bigger. But what we can do as a country or as people, especially as white people, is come to terms with whiteness. What side of it are you on? Is it just a social and political designation, or is it something fundamental to you that you're willing to fight and die for? If it comes to that point, you've done something tragically wrong because it don't exist. You put two human beings in a room together, they're going to be human beings, irrespective of whatever you call them.
But people did die over it, right? The Civil War or not the Civil War, the Revolution. Okay,
people still are dying for it. Yes.
People are still dying over it. So people are still defending their whiteness by that, and it's like I don't know.
It's not you're not running out with a rebel flag tied around as a cape.
I've never been in a fight.
Yesterday there were people running around the Capitol with Trump flags as capes.
The lady died with it around her neck, and she's a military vet. Mm-hmm. How can
they supplanted the American flag with a Trump flag?
Yeah.
All that is white supremacy played out to its most illogical conclusion.
Well,
it's
thank you.
logical, like when you get that nativist, when you get that that ethnocentric, like that's your whole identity, you're willing to go that hard for it.
Also,
what we
folks,
have to do as a country is realize that it ain't worth going that hard for it, because at the end of the day, you can't get anything done without everybody. And it ain't got done.
For all the regular people watching, I'm going to leave a link in the description to Webster's Dictionary and a thesaurus, so we can all actually figure out what Dr. Collins is saying.
There was one word in
I'm
there.
gonna go there,
I'm
you guys. I'm gonna go there, you guys. I can't.
I love it. I appreciate that response, Armondo. I mean, it seems so simple, doesn't it? But it's like, that's what I'm saying. Some people forget some of these concepts are so basic. Good, evil, human, other human. You know what I mean? This is how civics work. But it's like we've forgotten all about that. All we care about is like the Kardashians and I like their beauty regimens. Okay, I'm down for that. But anything else they stand for, it's just like, what? You know, we forget about it. And no, you know, people need a release. People don't want to be thinking about politics all the time. It's depressing, the State of the Union right now. But yesterday, it was like this one day, even people couldn't focus. You know what I mean? They don't understand. It's like they don't understand how it affects them. They don't understand how it affects them.
Something about like, if you're still posting bikini pics today, I think you need to evaluate.
I said selfies, ass shots, and other stupid shit.
I was like, I mean, I'm a mom. On my Facebook page, I have like all of these people asking questions like, my baby hasn't eaten in 2 hours, and I'm like, how can I love my daughter and I'm taking care of you right now, but anything, like the only thing that I can pay attention to is the craziness that is happening in our country right now. I mean, I can't.
And I'm the selfie queen, so I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but come on.
Yeah, I mean,
the Capitol's being stormed.
Like, I'm a social media comedian. Like, I really think I got a comedic fan base on social media. However, when this started going on, everything focused on that.
Duh,
because that is a national issue. If us as a country does not come to terms with what this means and what it is, like, this isn't our parents' problem. This is our grandparents' problem. It wasn't them in the past. We're the adults now.
Mm-hmm.
The country is not on some immutable trajectory. Like, it can't be stopped. It's not a runaway train. Mm-hmm. We're sitting in the passenger and the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Stop it.
That's why I took the flag back, and I accidentally ordered the biggest damn flag on Amazon, and now my birds won't even eat at the feeder. And I made sure to put my, Trump nope sign underneath it so people didn't think I was a Trumper. But it honestly pisses me off. And Chris, you guys know I've been talking about this for months. Take the flag back. It doesn't mean Trump. It doesn't mean Democrats. It doesn't mean white people. It doesn't mean black people. It means American citizens. And I want to take it back. I just want to wear it everywhere I go, and people to know I'm not, because it's like, you see the American flag, it pisses me off. Yesterday, you put the Trump flag up and take that down on the Capitol. Ooh.
As they were chanting USA, USA, USA.
That is treason.
Take the flag back.
You rolled it. I'm in North Carolina. I can't roll up to the state capitol of North Carolina and remove the North Carolina state flag and put my flag there without it being called treason, sedition, and me getting my head blown off.
Literally, I mean, you wouldn't even be around. You wouldn't even be around to see what happens, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It's like,
I don't want people to get their heads blown off, but I also don't want white people taking over the state capitol in the name of whiteness. Whatever regime that creates, I know it's not going to advantage me.
But
it's antithetical to the idea of America, which was supposed to be a social and political organization of human beings that did not have a monarch, a divine ruler, and a ruler forever. And it also didn't have a religious basis for its existence. It also didn't have an ethnic basis for its existence. That's why we used to be the country of immigration. Bring me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses.
Yep.
What we've done in the last 4 years has flipped all of that into an ethno-nationalism that says whiteness is what this country is, and that's all it is, and anybody who comes here is a servant of that. For those of us who grew up in Gen X, me, as a non-white person, I'm like, what the fuck? Fuck y'all.
Yes, the first F word of the podcast. Hey,
like, that's not
but
American.
I look at them and you keep talking about whiteness. I understand totally what you're saying. I'm not those people. I understand that being white, I know, but it's like hard because you know, when you talk about whiteness, you see those people are nut jobs in my mind. Like, you know, they're the people, like, do they not know what North Korea is? People in North Korea can't even have pictures of stuff in their house. They have to have pictures of the leader. That's where this is headed. You don't even have internet. Like, who knows? I'm not saying it's going to get to that, but what was so crazy about what happened to me yesterday is, what are you doing? Your other leader, Pence, is in there right now. You guys do know you elected him, and you know that you elected McConnell too. And you're going in there, and your own people are saying this is unconstitutional to challenge this. And you want to talk about constitutional-ist and originalism, and, you know, people wanting Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. This is not. All these Republicans that just objected to the election and Trump, they don't give a shit about the Constitution. If you're an originalist, and I'm not, then you should be just perplexed, and just your mind should be blown. If you're a Republican with any sense, and a lot of Republicans say they're constitutionalists, originalists, the reading of the Constitution should be how it is. How can you sit back right now and still support that party in this madness if you really are truly a Republican originalist in the Constitution? I mean, it's like, doesn't that just blow your, I mean,
no Republican.
It's non-educated. I swear they're like non-educated white people.
Is an originalist, no matter what they say. First of all, if they were, there'd be no women, there would be no minorities. It would only be rich, landed white men sitting in Congress. Mm-hmm. For the most part, it is, but it's not. Also, they created the Constitution as a living document, not an immutable document.
Right. That's what I believe. Same with the Bible. I'm not a literal word of God person either. You know what I mean? It's a text, old text that, you know, I believe is the basis for things, but it's a living, exactly as you said, it's a living document that changes.
If you didn't have the internet, how can you sit there and talk about the internet age? Like when they had it, it was 16 guys who only were talking to those 16 guys.
Well, and I also feel that's why people aren't engaged as much in politics. Back then, if something happened, they didn't have the internet. They were reading books, planning field. You know what I mean? It was like people were so engaged with democracy and what was happening in this country back then. Now it's like it's something they just swipe. Oh, politics, politics. It's like, well, that's part of how we ended up here. You know what I mean? It's our own fault. We've stopped making politics important. We've stopped making it something people should care about. We stopped making who you vote for, what party you're aligned with, what you believe, not a priority. Oh, as long as they didn't do anything mean to me, it's cool, you know, whatever. No, that's not. I think that all of these things, and as a digital, you know, media scholar, you can speak to it. I mean, the internet and big media has also a part to play in this. Come on, you know what I mean? And why we've gotten to this part. Obviously, you know. The
punishment for Donald Trump for all of this, and I know I keep haranguing on that one person because if he leaves, it's still gonna be the problem. But
fuck Trump.
The only consequence that he had was they took him off social media for a short time,
which is a huge punishment for him. But still, like in the scope of things,
it shows how important this big tech and social media are. Us all communicating together, and this ability. We're doing Jetson stuff right now. Mm-hmm. Like. This is important, our ability to communicate with each other and communicate with a wide audience without there being a gatekeeper in front of us.
So then what happens now with big tech? You think that they're going to get slapped? Because, I mean, that's part of how all this...
That was cover your own ass. That was cover your own ass liability.
Absolutely. So with everything that's happened and with what, you know, could be happening with the unknown, and, you know, I think we'll call it in closing today. Let's start with Megan. Where do we go from here as a country? How do we proceed forward after this? Are we pointing fingers at each other saying, well, your side did this and your side did that? Like, how do we move forward?
I mean, part of what has to happen is we have to restore faith, some level of faith in our government, in our electors. I think a lot of that has been lost, especially with Trump. Trump didn't start the path to where we're at right now, you know, and you know, George Bush spoke up yesterday. Well, he didn't speak up before yesterday. He's the only living Republican. But, you know, I think a lot of people right now feel like there is no party for them. you're certainly not Republican, and you're not socialist Bernie Sanders. That's what they call him, crazy Bernie. And it feels like there's no party for you. But I think what people have to understand is that the government is not going to fall overnight. They can try, but it's not. So you have to find a way to somehow make the government work for you. And that's not a small order. But that's why I think voting, and I know people are like, Megan just always talking about voting. It makes it, look at Georgia. It takes a race like Georgia for people to really understand, why is the Senate seats important? Because McConnell calls bills to the floor. He wouldn't even call the Equal Rights Amendment that just honorarily gives women equal rights. That was passed not within the right time, ratification period, but was passed years ago, and he wouldn't even call it. All the bills, the George Floyd, Policing Act, those things that people care about are gonna come up in front of your elected officials. You can say, screw politics, I don't vote, but guess what? That system is still churning even when you're not participating in it. It's not stopped, and it probably won't stop in our lifetime. So then how can we try to change? Honestly, for one of the people I listen to all the time, and I wasn't like a super Obama person, that dude is so smart when he talks about stuff like this in civics and how voting engagement, saying just because something doesn't work for you 100%, saying you're not going to participate in it, and he says this all the time, is nuts. Why would you, just because something's not 100% working for you, you're not going to do it. I think it's a matter of getting people engaged in civics. And I think it's a matter of, realizing that some white people are batshit crazy and they're going to storm the Capitol because they're going to follow Trump. But there's a lot of white people looking at that like, what the fuck is happening? And I blame I've gotten in fights with some older Republicans that are very smart and very educated. And I've said, it's him. You need to stand up right now, even before the election, and start talking to younger Republicans, younger people who you see. You're the ones that are around them all the time because you're Republicans. Start explaining to them that this is not the way and that this is not the person you should follow. You can be a Republican. You can believe in Republican values, some of them, and that's your choice, right? We need that. I don't want all Democrats everywhere. It's a check and balances. That's the whole foundation of this. But I think some of it it's hard to just figure out how to bring race together. Try to figure out a way to communicate your point with people. And I literally made it a pet project all summer to start debate on Facebook, because people have forgotten that sometimes you can have a debate without it being a complete nightmare and you hate each other and you don't agree. I mean, we could pick some topics that Armondo and I disagree with probably, and we could have a debate about them. And at the end of it, we could be cool with each other. That happens. We've lost that. So I think like some of those things that seem so easy, just communication, civics, stuff like that, literally just trying to see the human in other people, like Armondo said, and not see their skin color. If we just gave some attention to those things, in my opinion, things would be different.
Janie, what about you? Where do we go from here as a country?
Well, I mean, the first thing I thought of when you asked Megan that, I was just like, well, obviously we need to come together. That's what we always say. We need, like, both parties need to have a bridge. We need to not hate the other side. And I've been trying very hard, I was talking to you about this earlier, to let people have their different ideas and their different beliefs. But there is something to be said about standing up against those people who are just so far right wing that it's dangerous. I mean, I completely agree with Megan as well when she said, I learned from you to try to debate with people and not let it get to a place of hate. To talk.
I helped one person. Thank the Lord.
No, I definitely I would read through your comment sections, and see how you could.
I got this little weird fan base this summer from it, and I was like, that was not the intent, but here we go.
I was one of them. Liking all of your good posts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the debate and the constant, we need to continue to talk to each other. And because if we keep sitting in our own two realms, it just brews and things get even more far left and more far right. We need to continue the conversation and have open minds, I think.
Dr. Collins, your thoughts, sir?
I agree with Megan and Janie that we have to communicate more with one another as human beings. I would add that we have to get past the binary way of thinking that we've all been trained in, thinking of human beings as either in one box or another, black, white, Republican, Democrat, as if any of those things actually measure up to who the individual human being we're dealing with are. There's a bunch of different types of white people and white persons, like just like there's a bunch of different black people. There's a bunch of different Republicans. There's a bunch of different Democrats. I am not willing to go to tell people to go soft on exclusionary politics or anything that violates anyone else's right to be. I think that we as an America need to reshape our value system as a country. We need to reshape it in such a way that it is not based on scarcity. It's rather based on abundance. Right now, once you had the internet and iPods, I'm willing to gamble on the side of abundance. We can do anything. It doesn't have to be a competition between me and you for survival. It doesn't have to be my race or my team against you in order to eat and survive. Moreover, we need to talk to one another honestly and openly about the present, future, and past. No one group did this. No one group made this. There has been a dominant group controlling the narrative in its own favor, but most of that was a lie. It did not come without the cooperation of everybody, and it can't continue without the cooperation of everybody. And we're at a stage of humanity in the United States where being born into this isn't a burden on you. It isn't something you got to work for this country for the rest of your life to prove yourself. This country is a thing in motion, moving, and it moves based on you, your labor, your vote, your consumption, and your social security number. That should mean something. There should be certain protections for you. There should be certain rights for you. And we have the capacity to do it if we had the willingness to do it. There shouldn't be homeless people in front of Walmart, which has a ton of surplus for them. Mm-hmm. You eliminate that problem, you've eliminated homelessness. If you eliminate poverty, you eliminate a good portion of crime.
Wow.
We have the capacity to do that. We're always talking about sustainability. Well, let's talk about economic and social sustainability. How are we going to keep this together? How are we going to create an economics that works for everyone? And it isn't just me getting money. I could ball out. But if you're hungry, the problem still exists. Yeah. You could have 1 million Black people come out of whatever we call poverty, and they get put into the 1%. That doesn't change the rampant and violent inequality of the society. And the problems that attain to that violent, rampant inequality are still going to show up. Mm-hmm. Instead of, putting Band-Aids on it, let's solve the real problem. We have the capacity to do it. We just need to add the will to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Amen.
So,
what about you, Chris?
Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So with that, for first-time viewers, for first-time listeners, we collectively are One Minnesota. We have several other people that are behind the scenes. A lot of, as we go through the seasons, you'll meet, we'll do spotlights with them. But everything that you're hearing, everything that you're seeing is what One Minnesota is. We will provide basic needs to our communities. We will provide food and shelter, but we will also try as hard as we can to break the cycle. And we'll do that starting this spring by free financial classes from financial professionals on how to improve your credit score, how to become a homeowner, how to, sustain and grow a business. We will offer free legal counsel. We will offer, all these different things from all these different places and all these extraordinary people that I'm so fortunate to have the ability to reach out to that believe in my vision that I see. And 3 of those people are on this podcast and on this Zoom call today. So going forward as a country, I think going forward as One Minnesota, and not to sound too arrogant about it, but maybe the rest of the country could take notes on what we're doing and what we're saying and seeing what a mixed bag we are, coming from different backgrounds and different cities and different just, everything, but coming together with one common goal, which is our literal mission statement, the betterment of humanity, starting with our own communities. And if you can't tell, we are regular people that are passionate and believe in and care about everyone that's out there listening. No one here is going to, turn you away because of who you vote for, what you believe. When my father started the first ever school lunch program in Minnesota, he didn't say, dependent on who you vote for or what color you are, you can get food for your kids. It was just, if you need help, we have help. And that's what we're doing here. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Dr. Collins, for joining us. Thanks, Megan Curtis. Janie B, I still can't believe that you put up with all my stuff, but I am so grateful that we can keep going. Thank you, everybody at home, for listening and tuning in. There will be much more coming. We have so many episodes left during this season with so many great guests. Thank you, everybody, again, and God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both.